What is going on, YouTube? It is Sharks here from Sharks Auto. I hope you are having a great day. I had a pretty good day. Today was my first day in my new job, but you didn't click on this video to hear about my day. You clicked on this video to talk about cars, so let's start doing that. And, lately I've been finding myself thinking about where the automotive industry is heading and kind of what horrors the future holds for automotive enthusiasts. I will admit that recent developments do show us signs of a better future, with the companies pushing back against electrification and smaller engines. It's nice to see AMG bringing back the V8s, Ford refusing to stop making V8s, and BMW firing their designers. However, I still think that the walls are closing in and stricter laws are being put in place both against emissions and driving. Both the manufacturers and enthusiasts are being pressed, and it seems like although the culture will not die, it's not going to flourish either. Because of this, I began to wonder if we would ever see cars as great as the Holy Trinity ever be produced again. Cars that are performance monsters with such personality and presence. But then I also realized in more recent history, there have been some damn good cars. Now, these cars aren't anywhere close to the level of the Holy Trinity, but they are impressive enough to be mentioned, and I am dubbing them the Unholy Quartet. And now, of course, if you don't know what the Holy Trinity is, I'm going to briefly mention it to you. And now, if you've been into cars for any amount of time, the chances are that you have heard the Holy Trinity mentioned before. And it's a trio of cars that are considered to be nearly godlike in both their performance and the impact they've had on the automotive industry. Now, these three cars are none other than the McLaren P1, Ferrari LaFerrari, and Porsche 918 Spider. And I'm not going to go in depth on these cars. I'll probably create an entire different video and blog post for them. But suffice to say that each of these cars are true achievements of greatness in their engineering and their spirit and their performance, and there exists very few cars that can even hold a candle to them. And now you might be wondering naturally, what is the Unholy Quartet? This is a group of four cars that have come out in recent years that I think are quite impressive and deserve to be recognized. And I've selected these cars not just based on performance not numbers, but also my personal opinion of their presence and their impact that they've had on the automotive industry and car culture. And without further ado, I'll announce the four cars right now. The first is the Huracan STO, followed by the AMG GTR, the Porsche 911 GT3 RS, and the Viper ACR. And these are in no particular order. They're all equally as great, I'd argue. And what I say presence, what I mean is that when any of these cars pull up to a car meet or they're mentioned during a debate, an immediate hush tends to fall over the crowd. These are cars that are nearly universally respected, appreciated, and sometimes feared across the industry. They are unquestionably high performers, but they also have a sort of presence and personality about them. A presence I feel is similar in nature to that exhibited by the Holy Trinity. I also feel obligated to mention the McLaren Senna here. It is a car that I initially included on my list, but I removed for two reasons. The first is that I wanted to include something American, hence the Viper, and the second is I feel the Senna is far above the cars that I've listed on the Unholy Quartet. It's not even in the same class. It's so far above them, but it's also still below the Holy Trinity, I'd feel. It's much closer to the Trinity than I think anybody has ever come, but it's not quite there, and I found myself to instead include it as an honorable mention instead of put it on either of the lists. I must say that I think it is one of the few cars that could be argued to be on the same level as the Holy Trinity, though. Without further ado, let's get into the Unholy Quartet. And the first car I have, again, in no particular order, is the Huracan STO. Now, this is a car that stunned reviewers and I think the entire automotive industry with its capabilities. In fact, Motor Trend reported that most of their reviewers needed more time with the car to find its limits, and I'm going to give you a second to think about how insane that is. These are car reviewers from Motor Trend that drive performance cars for a living, and they struggled to find the limits of the STO. The only thing that the reviewers could really complain about on the car was that its drive modes were hard to understand. Now, this alone I think speaks volumes about the capabilities of this car. The original Huracan was actually a great car, but Lamborghini wanted more, so they enhanced it to make the Performante, which was a very special car, but Lamborghini still wanted more, so they made the STO, a nearly perfect car. The STO beat the Performante's lap time by nearly 3 seconds at the Daytona International Speedway. Now, in typical Lamborghini fashion, it's powered by a 5.2-liter V10 producing 630 horsepower and 417 pound-feet of torque, mated to a 7-speed automatic. This allows the STO to get from 0 to 60 miles per hour in 2.8 seconds, which is fast. Even for the cars on this list, that is fast. And although the STO is rear-wheel drive, it doesn't feel like that. In fact, it handles more like an all-wheel drive vehicle, having staggering amounts of grip in the corners that it really shouldn't be able to handle these turns. And what people found even more impressive was the consistency with which it could achieve this. The car performed almost the same on every single run, which is very, very impressive. The brakes, of course, are tuned perfectly and stop this 3,400-pound car with ease. And it doesn't just stop at the brakes. This car was tuned perfectly. Lamborghini left no stone unturned. Every component of this car was perfected. Most reviewers could only compare it to the Aventador SVJ, a car that has two more cylinders, all-wheel drive, and is in a different class altogether. Different price class, too, mind you. Lamborghini created a monster here, and it nearly outperforms their most performance-oriented vehicle. Now, the next car on the list is the Mercedes-AMG GTR. This is a car that was built to take on the best that Porsche has to offer, and that's really no small feat to attempt. When this car came out, it was served, well, let me just say this. When this car came out, it really served as a reminder to the entire industry about what AMG is capable of and what they can be. It also reminded Porsche that they aren't invincible and someone's right on their heels. And of course, competition is great for us, the consumer, because it forces innovation from the manufacturers. Its main target was actually a car on this list, the 911 GT3 RS, which we'll get to. Following, a similar path to Lamborghini, Mercedes first made the AMG GTS, which was pretty fast and respected, but they weren't satisfied, so they made the AMG GTR. Probably one of the scariest things to come out of Germany since Hitler, if I'm being honest. This car, brought forth several interesting innovations, all of which I just can't name in this single video. But one that I find particularly interesting is how it implemented four-wheel steering. Now, four-wheel steering is not new, it's been around since the 90s. I think the R34 had it, but AMG did something special here. So above 62 miles per hour, the rear wheels turn in the same direction as the fronts, and below 62 miles per hour, the rear wheels turn in the opposite direction from the fronts. So now at high speeds, this helps take the braking load off the front wheels when turning, and this type of braking usually causes the front brakes to overheat, which is amazing. Now, of course, the AMG GTR is powered by a 4-liter twin-turbo V8 that produces 577 horsepower, 516 pound-feet of torque. It is running nearly 3 pounds more boost, lower compression, ported heads, retuned gear ratios over the GTS. And now this rear-wheel drive beast can move from 0 to 60 miles per hour in 2.9 seconds, due in no small part to its 7-speed automatic transmission. And although on paper this seems like a car to be quite rowdy, several reviewers praised it for its control. And although AMG is known for producing overpowered and poorly handling vehicles that are kind of like boats, the AMG GTR is extremely refined and truly was capable of surpassing Porsche. The impact that the AMG GTR had on the automotive industry is clear. It served as a reminder of what AMG is capable of. Now, the second last car on this list is none other than the Porsche 911 GT3 RS. Nearly every automotive enthusiast has heard of this car. It's renowned for its exceptional capabilities and is known for being one of the best all-around cars ever. Reviewers have regularly been surprised by the amount of grip and control this chassis offers, as has been customary for Porsche. Porsche has never offered the largest power numbers, never the biggest engines, they never had the loudest exhaust, but they've always had great handling. And the GT3 RS is the pinnacle of control and grip, the product of Porsche's, years of experience. The precision that this car offers is unmatched. All of the driver inputs have been perfected and respond almost immediately. The brakes, of course, are way, 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 way more powerful than anybody would expect. They are 16-inch rotors in the front, and they stop this car on a dime. The transmission is a 7-speed automatic. Of course, it's a PDK that shifts nearly immediately. And this is a true driver's car. In fact, most drivers actually lack the skill required to push this car to its limits, and that's a testament to the capabilities of this car. It's so great that only great drivers can actually push it to its limits. And in typical Porsche fashion, it's powered by a naturally aspirated 4-liter flat 6, producing 518 horsepower that of course has a rev limiter set at 9,000 RPM. This car can move from 0 to 60 miles per hour in 2.7 seconds. The aerodynamics and suspension of the GT3 RS are also a thing of beauty. They produce so much downforce and grip that it takes real effort to break this car loose. I believe that of all the impressive cars on this list, I think the GT3 RS has the fastest Nürburgring lap time, though I suspect the STO would probably give it a run for its money. And last but not least is the Dodge Viper ACR. Some people may feel that the Viper doesn't quite deserve to be on this list. I have to respectfully disagree. My reasons for including the Viper on this list go deeper than just wanting to give the Americans some representation. It is perhaps the only car that is feared not only by its competitors, but also its owners. Several owners have stated that the Viper is a car that feels like it wants to kill you. Several owners have severe burns on their calves from the side exhausts right outside the door. It has little to no safety features to save you when you choose to drive dangerously. It only wants to go as fast as possible. This car changed the way American cars were viewed. I feel that it's always been kind of looked at ever since it came out as America's exotic. It's quite a shame that Dodge had to discontinue the Viper. Growing up, it was one of my favorite cars. I really thought it was the definition of badass. The Corvette has always been great and an American beast, but I found it to be almost too common and overdone. They're still great. The Ford GT is less common, but I don't think it's beastly enough, at least not anymore, but still a great car. The Viper just strikes a perfect balance to be America's exotic. It has that supercar look to it, and it's also rowdy, loud, and obnoxious, which is everything you'd expect from Americans. The Dodge built the Viper to be the ACR to be fiercer than any of the Vipers before it, because it would be the last hurrah of the Viper family. I believe that to this day, it holds the fastest lap time on the Nürburgring of all production manual cars. And if everything I've said above doesn't prove to you that the ACR has had a great impact on the automotive industry, let me just throw some of its performance stats at you. It's powered by an 8.4-liter V10, producing 645 horsepower and 600 pound-feet of torque. Mind you, all from a naturally aspirated engine, which means that this power curve would be something insane to experience. It is, of course, rear-wheel drive and mated to a 6-speed manual, all of which moves the ACR from 0 to 60 miles per hour in 3.3 seconds. I'll give you a second to digest those astounding numbers, keeping in mind this is all a stock street-legal car that's NA. And if that's not impressive enough, back in 2017, this car held more track records than any other production car, ever. And if after reading this you're not impressed, then I don't know what to tell you. This is one of the best American cars. You know what? Scratch that. It's one of the best cars ever produced, period. And that brings us to the end of the list. And as I stated earlier, each of the cars in the Unholy Quartet commands a certain level of respect. Debates will quiet down when one of them are mentioned. If you've ever been at a car meet and one of these pulls in, people will stop what they're doing and watch. These cars have a level of presence that few others can match. And again, they don't have the same level of presence as anything in the Holy Trinity does, but they certainly have more than average and deserve to be recognized for it. As always, thank you guys for watching, and you can read this article and a bunch more all for free on my blog, www.sharksauto.com. Thank you again.